The jump from 2D to 3D wasn't just technical, it was a philosophical leap. Rockstar had already discovered freedom and player agency in the 2D era. Now, with the release of Grand Theft Auto 3, they were ready to bring those principles to life in 3 dimensions. Liberty City was revolutionary. No longer was the player observing from above. The streets, alleys, and buildings now felt real, tangible, and inhabited. NPCs moved according to routines, traffic flowed, and the city reacted mechanically to player actions. Side missions, taxis, and random chaos were no longer just diversions, they were extensions of the player's agency, creating emergent stories within a living city. But the true genius of GTA 3 lay in its approach to systemic storytelling. The world wasn't simply a backdrop, it communicated narrative through its districts, architecture, and inhabitants. Crime-ridden slums, bustling commercial areas, and shadowy docks all contributed to a city that lived independently of the player, yet fully responded to their choices. The formula was simple, yet profound: freedom and narrative could coexist seamlessly. 2 years later, Rockstar expanded this concept with Grand Theft Auto, Vice City. Vice City didn't just add polish, it added identity. Set in a neon-soaked, 1980s Miami-inspired metropolis, the city itself became a character. Music, architecture, fashion, and mission design combined to create a world that was alive culturally and emotionally. Players weren't simply completing objectives, they were inhabiting an era. Vice City also refined Rockstar's narrative philosophy. Missions, characters, and the environment intertwined, making every player action feel meaningful. The city's personality shaped how the story was experienced, demonstrating that open-world freedom thrives when anchored in context. Chaos could still happen, but it existed within a purposeful, immersive framework. Then came 2004's Grand Theft Auto, San Andreas, a culmination of the 3D era's ambition. San Andreas didn't just expand the map, it expanded the player's role within it. The game offered an entire state, urban centers, rural landscapes, deserts, mountains, forests, and suburbs. Each region had its own identity, routines, and interactions, making the world feel organic and responsive. San Andreas introduced deep player mechanics that blurred the lines between avatar and world. CJ's stats, gang affiliations, property ownership, and even physical appearance directly influenced gameplay. Territories could be conquered or lost, interactions with NPCs shifted dynamically, and choices had lasting consequences. The world wasn't merely a stage, it was an ecosystem in which the player had meaningful control. What makes the 3D era remarkable is Rockstar's mastery of balance between freedom and narrative. Liberty City offered systems and chaos, Vice City added style and cultural immersion, and San Andreas combined both with unprecedented scale and player influence. These titles demonstrated that open worlds could be immersive, expressive, and systemic simultaneously. Beyond mechanics, this era taught a key lesson: player-driven stories require context. A map alone isn't compelling. NPCs alone aren't memorable. Rockstar understood that freedom without identity feels empty, and narrative without player agency feels restrictive. By integrating these elements, they created experiences that were both emergent and cinematic. The 3D era wasn't just about technical innovation, it was about establishing the philosophy of modern open-world design. Systems, freedom, narrative, and atmosphere were no longer separate concepts. They were intertwined, forming the foundation for every GTA game that followed. From top-down chaos to handheld experimentation, and now fully realized 3D cities, Rockstar had perfected the formula: freedom, systems, and identity in a living world. The 3D era showed players what open-world gaming could truly be, not just a space to roam, but a space to exist, interact, and tell personal stories within. Yet the journey wasn't over. By the mid-2000s, Rockstar had already proven that open-world freedom, systemic depth, and player agency could define a franchise. But the 3D era wasn't just about cities and chaos, it was about stories within those worlds. And nowhere was this more apparent than in Liberty City Stories, 2005, and Vice City Stories, 2006. These games weren't simply spin-offs. They were extensions of previously established worlds, designed to deepen the narrative experience while refining gameplay systems. Both titles explored prequels to iconic stories, offering players context and history for characters and events they had already encountered. Liberty City Stories took players back to 1998, before the events of GTA 3. The city was familiar yet subtly different, reflecting the era's unique criminal ecosystem. Players assumed the role of Tony Cipriani, a mob enforcer navigating gang rivalries, family loyalties, and the politics of organized crime. What makes Liberty City Stories remarkable is how it integrated systemic gameplay with narrative depth. The city felt alive, with criminal factions vying for territory and the consequences of player actions rippling across the environment. Missions weren't just isolated objectives, they were woven into the city's ecosystem. Technically, Liberty City Stories also demonstrated Rockstar's ability to compress a living world onto a portable platform. Originally designed for the PSP, the game retained the scale, freedom, and systemic interactions of its console counterparts. It proved that narrative and freedom could coexist, even in hardware-constrained environments. Then came Vice City Stories, transporting players to the 1980s once again, but this time before Tommy Vercetti's rise to power. Players assumed the role of Victor Vance, experiencing the gritty underbelly of crime in a city defined by neon lights, corruption, and ambition. Vice City Stories expanded Rockstar's narrative ambitions by exploring untold events that shaped the city, giving players a new lens through which to understand Vice City's culture and history. The brilliance of Vice City Stories wasn't just its setting, it was how Rockstar weaved player agency into storytelling. Missions, side activities, and emergent chaos all contributed to the narrative context. A drive-by or a completed mission wasn't just mechanical, it mattered within the story world. Players weren't just witnessing history, they were actively participating in it. Both titles also refined the core systems of open-world interaction. Gang wars, territory control, and dynamic NPC behavior were more sophisticated, offering feedback loops that made the cities feel reactive. Rockstar had learned from the successes and limitations of San Andreas, translating those lessons into compact, high-impact environments. From a design perspective, the 3D Stories era represented a critical evolution. Prequels as narrative tools, exploring the past enriched the mainline stories. Portable worlds with depth, freedom, systems, and narrative could coexist even on limited hardware. Cities as characters, the environments weren't just backdrops. They influenced, reflected, and reacted to player actions. The impact of these games is often underestimated. They didn't redefine 3D gameplay in the way GTA 3 or San Andreas did, but they perfected the fusion of story and system, a fusion that would become essential in GTA 4 and beyond. By the end of this era, Rockstar had demonstrated that open-world storytelling wasn't just about scale or chaos, it was about context, consequence, and immersion. Players now expected cities that reacted meaningfully to their choices, stories that mattered, and systems that intertwined with narrative in dynamic ways. From Liberty City to Vice City, these stories weren't simply side games, they were laboratories for narrative and systemic innovation. Rockstar had mastered the art of making players feel like active participants in worlds that were vibrant, reactive, and alive.